Talking about being beaten, should we talk about this Trump-Putin land grab thing? What do you think the solution needs to be here? Because as I was just outlining in my monologue at the beginning, I think it's very easy for people like Tobias Ellwood to say, well, look, what needs to happen here is we need to make sure we don't give in to Vladimir Putin. Well, we are 3 years in, by the way, and that attitude really has not got us very far in terms of a resolution. Million casualties, and I think we're up to about $200 billion in cost. That's just the West's contribution. We've got to be pragmatic here and understand the men, I think, that we're dealing with, don't you think, in terms of ego?
Well, it's not even in terms of ego. You know, this is a Biden proxy war, let's be honest, and the amount of money that has been funneled into Volodymyr Zelensky and indeed the whole of Ukraine, notwithstanding the fact that we gave them carte blanche for the Ukrainian women and children to come over here to this country. Meanwhile, this is the rub, Russell, the UK and Starmer, under Starmer's Barmy Army, we are now actually looking at what's going on. We are mere participants. We are mere voyeurs. We are not at all holding any of the hands that will help stop this. It's going to happen between Putin and Trump. Yeah. We like it or not. And then you've got Europe saddling up. I mean, that press release that Keir Starmer put out, in my view, was like a school report.
Well, what is this? The Coalition of the Willing?
Something like
Whatever
that.
that
I mean,
means.
There was loads of word salad in it.
Yeah.
But then he had to give it the gravitas. You know, we will not give in. And if you look at the geographical map of where the Russia is implementing most of their force against Ukraine, it's all up that north eastern corner.
Yeah.
And we've known for years that this was a land grab, a la Crimea. We've known for years that Biden supported this and said to Zelensky, "Don't you worry. We'll keep you safe," because do you know what? War pays.
Yeah.
They're not interested at all in the poor, innocent victims of all of this.
Yes, and of course, yeah, the human cost, which we're aware of, but I don't think gets rehearsed as much as it should do. But the financial cost, it seems to be an open checkbook, doesn't it?
Of course it does.
On the part of the West. Volodymyr Zelensky, you know, we're used to him now walking across the lawn of the White House or walking up Downing Street almost with his hand out to ask for more and more money. I think the question has to be asked, where is all that money?
He's got a damn cheek.
Is there an accounting trail? Do we know where every dollar and every pound has been spent?
That's the other thing I was going to bring up. Thanks for segueing in there, actually, Russell, because we've known that there has been criminal activity in terms of what the money has actually gone on to, and some of the money's not actually been accounted for.
There are some Ukrainians buying some rather large houses in London at the moment. I mean, that's completely
figure.
Unrelated, I'm sure.
Well, you said that, not me. I would be less pragmatic in my choice of words there. But, you know, I want it, obviously no one wants war. No one wants war. We've got the horrible destruction of Gaza at the moment in the Middle East. We've got the horrible war that's going on in Nigeria and Sudan at the moment that no one seems to be reporting on. It's just disgusting. The whole world at the moment is a tinderbox.
It is. But answer me this. Why did we not show as much concern as the Western world and our politicians when Russia blatantly invaded the Crimea in 2014? I mean, it seems that almost, you know, it made some headlines for a few days and it was forgotten. I think there were barely any sanctions. There was certainly no money funneled to the Ukraine to try and help them in their war effort against Putin at the time. I mean, is it just that, well, now that he's done this as a kind of secondary invasion, well, actually that now is a bridge too far? Because the two things are the same thing. Why are we showing such angst and such support for Zelensky now, but we didn't do 11 years ago?
Energy. I think it comes down to energy as well. I think it comes down to net zero rubbish. I think it comes down to all of the above. And I think it comes down to the discussion that we have to have around NATO. And in my view, I think NATO's finished now. I don't think.
Do you think Ukraine should sign up to NATO? Wouldn't that just end the conflict?
But they can't do it whilst they're in war. That's the other thing, and Putin knows that. And one of the things now, they're on about Article 5, that they can almost give them a hybrid version of NATO in terms of the Ukrainians joining it.
Yeah.
But
because whatever the rules are, surely the rules can be changed. I mean, we can't, you know, it's a bit like our government, all of the rules are this, that and the other. Well, hang on, you're there and empowered to change rules and regulations. So even though the rules might say, well, actually, because of a conflict being ongoing, the Ukraine can't join NATO, that can be changed. I mean, that
of course it can.
That actually, well, that does two things. things, right? So you end up in a position then where either that neutralises Putin and Russia and he has to withdraw because
which will never happen.
Because he's then at war with the world, and that won't happen because of the ego of the man. Don't forget, this is a chest-thumping, bare-backed individual that likes having photos taken in the wilderness riding a horse.
But he's also one of the only world leaders that openly made the sign of the cross at graves in Alaska. You don't see many heads of states doing that apart from the Pope.
Yeah. But Trump says that his talks with Putin, which of course lasted
10 out of
3 or 4 hours, he says 10 out of 10. I mean, do we expect anything else from Donald Trump?
I don't. I love the Donald. I think I'm very pleased.
Do you think he's important in this?
I don't think he is as important as he thinks it is. I think he's an important optic for the rest of the world to look at. He will be the catalyst, and I've said many a time before that if he were in power instead of Sleepy Biden, the Ukraine war wouldn't have happened.
We did say he solved it in 24 hours. I mean, we're now 7 months on.
I know, but we've come to expect him shooting from the hip, Russell.
Yes,
Let's
be honest. He does write checks that reality can't cash.
And that is why that is so. But isn't that so much more enlightening and so much more informative than having someone spun up the...
Yeah, I get it. I think Donald Trump is important here because of his personality, because he's bombastic, because he shakes trees, because he may not be the most diplomatic of diplomats.
No, and I love that.
Yeah, I do, and I think you need that, particularly when it comes to characters like Zelensky and Putin. I think you need someone to go in and throw a few metaphoric punches around so that people dust themselves down and then think, OK, right, we've now had the shock and awe treatment. Now perhaps we need to have a proper conversation now that the dust has settled to see if we can resolve this. Because all I hear, frankly, from commentators, whenever I host a show on Talk, and I have the likes of Tobias Ellwood on and all sorts of experts on Russia and the Ukraine and so on, I hear lots of hand-wringing and I hear lots of lamenting. I don't hear solutions. I don't hear solutions. And call Trump what you like, and I know he's a slightly Marmite and polarising figure, but I do think that he is what this needs on the basis that he is so aggressive in what he does and so almost thick-skinned, so unaware of foibles, if you like, that I think is exactly the person that actually might shake those trees enough to see a resolution here.
But he's also so... he just captures the moment, either with humour or with a throwaway comment, or he's just so unpredictable. And I think that's what we need as well. I think the world stage has had enough of Ursula von der Leyen, has had enough of Keir Starmer.
Did the world stage ever adopt and covet Ursula von der Leyen?
Well,
I'm not sure she was ever loved. Really.
I think Europe did.
But apart from by the EU itself.
And Scotland. But apart from that, we just need to... But meanwhile, do you not think Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping are sitting there with their popcorn?
Yeah.
They really are. It's a world stage, Russell.
I do think also, and again, look, the left-wing media over the last 48 hours have lambasted Trump really as a failure on the basis that he hasn't walked away from these discussions with a deal. No one realistically ever thought that there was going to be a deal, even a ceasefire after 3 or 4 hours.
I doubt Zelensky actually wants one. Well, because war pays, right?
Yes. Well,
war pays.
There is that. Look, I think this plays out, and I think that this is a chance at peace. But I also think that this is one of those things that will be settled on a business basis, I'm afraid. I think that's also why Donald Trump is very important here, because he negotiates as a deal maker on a commercial basis. And I think this will come down to land and minerals and face, dignity, humility. And as a consequence of that, I think he will kind of turn the screws, and I think we will end up with and I guess this has been called in some of the newspapers this morning, ladies and gentlemen, a trap that has been laid by Vladimir Putin on the basis that if a deal is put to Zelensky now as the third party almost in this, it's for Zelensky to say yes or no. And of course, if he says no, he looks like the bad guy.
Zelensky, his time's running out. He, a few months ago, a few weeks ago, did he not change the legislation that would make it illegal to do something that's already illegal at the moment? And a lot of Ukrainians were up in arms, no pun intended there, because of that. I don't think he's got the popular opinion that he once had when he was seen as the bastion of the saviour of the Ukraine against the big bad aggressor of Putin.
Yeah.
And interesting as well, I think, that they chose Alaska. Of course, it used to be Russian land.
Well, it did, but did you see on social media yesterday? There were all
I've been to Alaska.
Have you?
Weird place.
I've not had that pleasure. Is there anything actually there?
No, it's weird. It's weird as hell.
Just ice and snow. But lots of people saying this is ridiculous. You know, logistically, this was crazy. But actually,
it wasn't. It was a great optic.
If you understand that the world actually is a sphere and not flat, which some of us do, you'll realise that you can get from Russia to Alaska by not having to go through the airspace of any other countries. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is kind of why one of the reasons they picked Alaska.
And also for Trump to have that fly past.
Yes.
That was brilliant.
Yes, yeah, and to get him in the back of a car, so to speak.
The man is an absolute germphobe. Do you remember the photo of him during Brexit with him and Macron?
Yeah.
Putin, this is.
Yeah.
And the table was like 24 feet or something like that. But for him then to walk down that red carpet, get into a car with Trump, it's all about the optic, and that is something that Trump is very good at.
Talking of optics, but optics that are not very good, let's talk about this story here in the Sun, which is no threat, says a judge, who controversially then allows a knife-wielding migrant to stay in the UK, and it's alleged that it's because the judge is pro-migrants, pro-asylum. This is Judge Fiona Beach, who declared the Christian Quadjovi, good old-fashioned British name there, 26 years old, was not a threat to the public, despite the fact that he has wielded a knife in public, therefore clearly a danger to the public. And this judge has said, no, there's nothing to see here. Another example of two-tier justice, Claire.
No, come on, don't stir that pot, Russell. Christian, let's just say that Christian is actually his Christian name, Christian. Nothing to do with his religion and shock horror. We don't know what that is.
It's actually
that
French.
Has no being. That's not a religion.
No. I'm just saying he's French. Despite the fact he hasn't got a. Well, is it a French surname? I don't know. Whatever.
I think it's dangerous to mention anything or even voice the opinion that any of our judiciary are pro-immigrants, pro this or pro that. We have to.
You don't think there's a bias?
No, I don't. I honest to God hope there's not a bias, because...
I hope there isn't.
Well, this is what I'm saying, because it would be hugely damaging to our laws in this land, you know, are such that have been replicated and tried to be replicated over over the whole world, because they are so just. Dieu et mon droit. Right.
Yeah. Well, that's the that goes back a bit.
It does,
and that goes back way before Tony Blair introduced rules on judges that stated that they should be DEI friendly.
Well, look,
that's where it went wrong.
Look, the judges have come up from the benches, right? They're all solicitors, then they become barristers, then they get their silk to become King's or Queen's Counsel, and then they're voted by their peers to go into district judges, DJs, or even to Crown Court and then High Court judges.
I think that we all have our views, our political views, our ideologies, and I guess some of us, maybe not here on this channel, but we are in certain situations when it comes to our work where we have to kind of separate what we think ideologically versus the profession.
And the guidance under English law is there for judges.
They must do that, but how?
And they do.
But how does a judge that is so entrenched in pro-asylum charity work? I mean, this particular judge, Fiona Beach, actually on the board of a pro-asylum charity. It doesn't take much to join the dots that when she declares Christian Quadjovi a knife-wielding maniac as not a threat to the public and doesn't deport him, we can be forgiven for joining the dots on the basis that, yeah, actually she might be a bit biased.
Well, look, that's up to her. That's not up to us to judge, actually, because we don't know the ins and outs of the case. We don't have everything to tease here. But what I would say is, banding about two-tier justice, if there's anything of the Lucy Connolly case and the case that we just heard tried by jury of Ricky Jones, that then should show everyone that there's not a case of two-tier justice.
Those two cases were very, very different, because Lucy Connolly pled guilty.
This is what I'm about, Russell. This is my point. Right. This shows that the system is there. Are you really
trying to advance that you don't think there's any truth?
I'm not trying to advance anything.
You don't think there's any two-tier justice?
What I am saying is the fact that if you took your chances like Ricky Jones did and pled not guilty because he fundamentally believed rightly or wrongly, that he was not guilty of a crime of inciting racial hatred or violence.
Yeah, so two very different cases in terms of the dynamics, because one pleaded guilty, one pled not guilty. But what about the intervention by, is it Lord Halmer, I think, who's the Attorney General? Hermer, yeah, on the instructions seemingly of Keir Starmer that Lucy Connolly shouldn't be granted bail, where Ricky Jones was granted bail. That's two-tier.
Is it?
Yes, of course it is.
Right, well, you need to
because
then
there's political intervention.
Is the political intervention not started when Keir Starmer actually appointed Harmer? In my view, shouldn't have.
Yeah.
But Harmer should not be there to apologise for
politics
what's
and
done.
justice on a day-to-day basis should not interfere with each other.
Justice shouldn't interfere with the just, and justice shouldn't interfere with justice.
That's what's happening. So let's go to not just the judiciary, which I think there are cases to show and examples where two-tiered justice is very evident, I think, in Britain, but also when it comes to instructions to the rank-and-file police in terms of the way they deal with protests.
I think we've got an issue there.
We have seen that in spades.
I think the way things are presented in court,
Westminster, Southport,
Falkirk,
Liverpool, Newcastle, Canary Wharf, Barbican. I mean, we are seeing an absolute difference between the way that the police deal with a certain demographic in protests, i.e. I would say generally, not always, but largely peaceful protesters worried about their community, versus sometimes left-wing masked Antifa thugs that seem to get away with anything, even though sometimes they're arrested and then immediately released round the corner. But if you happen to be, and forget for a minute Peter Lynch, Lucy Connolly and so on, the extreme cases, we heard from Peter Blexley yesterday that one of his friend's sons was arrested literally just for picking up his phone off the ground and was charged with violent disorder, thankfully thrown out by a judge because the police in a heavy-handed way decided to target. In Westminster Summer's protest last year, they were targeting those that were protesting of a centre-right nature, as far-right thugs, which they are not, but also were literally innocently doing nothing of any legal consequence and was still kettled and still arrested.
So there's your two-tier justice. There's your two-tier system in the policing, not in the courts, right? The courts' hands are tied an awful lot of the time.
We'll agree to disagree.
No, we won't, because I'm right.
Well, no, we'll have to agree to disagree, because I disagree with you fundamentally that there is not such a thing as two-tier justice in the judiciary. I think we're both agreeing that there is a two-tier approach in the police.
Yes,
but
definitely.
In the judiciary, I think it's very, very clear. You know, there was a man that was 3 years ago ran up to a lady on the front at Bournemouth and placed his hands down her trousers, a migrant. And that individual, 3 years later, because he pled not guilty, was taken to court, and that particular judge, who also had asylum seeker sympathies, decided that that person should not be incarcerated for sexual assault because he came from Nigeria and had had a hard upbringing. That is a two-tier example. If I did that, whether I was drunk or not, I would be rightfully prosecuted and incarcerated. We are seeing it, Claire, in my view, I know we disagree, on a day-in, day-out basis. Ladies and gentlemen, who do you agree with here, me or Claire? I don't care, by the way. We're all entitled to our opinion and our view, but 0344 499 1000 or text 87222 and text. In fact, you have got a text here, Claire. Morning, Russell and Claire. Always agree with Claire. I like Claire, love Trump, he does what he says. Right, so this is not about our two-tier debate, this is about Trump. Please save us. Donald, we need you, says Jane Knock. Yeah, look, we're definitely agreeing on that. So anyway, let's move on. So the number of kids suspended from school for carrying weapons soars to almost 80 a day. So hang on, this is children in school carrying weapons, including 25 a day in reception classes. So they would be what? 5, 6, 7 years? Yeah, 4. Really?
Yeah, 4 or 5.
OK, this is gobsmacking. So this is in The Sun. Let me just read you some extracts from this. So this is from Paul Sims, one of the senior news reporters at The Sun. Number of kids suspended from school for carrying weapons soars to almost 80 a day. Seized weapons include everyday school items such as scissors and dinner knives, but also Stanley knives, BB guns, and even taser stun guns, right? So this doesn't look like this is being spun. This is 14,700
yeah, it's actual data.
Kids.
It's fact.
Yeah, sent home last year, up 12% from 2022. And there's some people saying that we don't have a problem when it comes to our children and crime, and in particular knife crime.
Riddle me this, Russell. how could Sadiq Khan, right, I'm being London-centric here for the moment, apologies, but I'm talking about crime figures. How can the crime figures be lower, according to some news agencies?
Well, they're not.
Well, exactly. I've got two answers to that, because a lot of them aren't being reported.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are, if they are being reported, are being dropped. They're not actually being taken any further. So we've got dangerous thugs, we've got dangerous people, we've got dangerous school children, we've got dangerous toddlers. Come on. The world's not very safe, especially not here, is it? So what can we do? Parental responsibility, it's the parents' fault.
Well, parental responsibility, although I think there are some parents now that think it's the school's responsibility.
Of course there is, because they've been infanticised.
Yes, but of course the schools then don't want to take responsibility because they don't want to be seen to be heavy-handed, biased, they don't want complaints from the children and indeed the parents. We all know how this plays out sometimes when there's an issue with a child at school. The school says to the parent, your child has brought a Stanley knife in and they're 5 years old. We're a bit worried that they might cause some damage with it. And of course the parents often, because they now feel humiliated and because they're having
they'll get angry.
Well, they're having the finger poked at them for being bad parents, because guess what, if you allow your child to go to school,
you are a bad parent.
Exactly, you really are a bad parent. But you end up with this, again, ego playing out, which is to say that the parent then backs the child against the school. So the school then says, I'm just going to give up insofar as this kind of discipline thing. And then what you end up with is no responsibility, no accountability, children running riot, which clearly they are. And these 4 and 5 year olds, can we join the dots, do we think, to when they're 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds on the street that haven't been chastised either by the authorities, school or parents, they start stabbing each other to death? It just plays out, doesn't it?
Of course it does. Of course it does. But the other overarching thing is here, where do they get the things from? And I'll tell you something. When you apply for a school, I've got 4 children, right? Well, my youngest is 21, my eldest is 27, right? It's been a while since I've had to have the tingling of, and give them a good spanking and good slap. But also, when you apply for a school place, right, you apply to the school, you then sign an agreement, right? It's like a contract. Yeah. You sign that contract, you are giving your parental responsibility over to that school to take temporarily in locus parentis to look after those children, to bring them up in the views, the faith, if so, but with the moral fortitude that you have as a parent. But you have to instill that in the child before you get there. It's more for keeping them safe, teaching them, and actually giving them social skills as well. Schools are not there to brush teeth. They're not there to feed children free meals. They're not, some of them, they're not there to change nappies. They're there to educate.
And let's just remind everybody, Claire, that this comes in the aftermath of Harvey Wilgoose, 15 years old, who was stabbed to death by a pupil of the same age at a school, not outside, but at All Saints Catholic High School in Sheffield. In February, his mum Caroline is calling for knife scanner arches in all schools. I mean, we're turning into the United States with knives.
It's just so sad. It's so sad.
Sad and a little bit pathetic that no one wants to stand up and take responsibility. You know, unfortunately, politicians continue to wring their hands. Parents want to pass the buck to schools. Schools want to admonish themselves of responsibility if they're worried about the consequences.
And worried about school safety for their teachers. Staff safety. I mean, that's paramount as well.
Let's go to a break. We've done half an hour of this. We're largely agreeing, not entirely, but that's good, isn't it? Because we have balance in this home of common sense at Talk as it is. It's 6:30. We're going to take a break now. When we come back, we're going to be talking about, let's talk about Suella Braverman, shall we? So she's taking a lot of credit at the moment.
We certainly won't be paying any attention to page 17 of The Sun of Boris Johnson's bare torso.
Yeah, let's not do that. In a Putin-esque type display of
Brokeback Mountain
masculinity. I'm Russell
Beer
Quirk.
and crisps.
This is Talk Breakfast. Back after this. Welcome back to this Sunday morning. This is Talk Breakfast. I'm Russell Quirk, in for Alex Phillips. Just gone 6:30. Still joined by Clare Muldoon. We're rattling through the day's stories. Now I want to get on to the credit, Clare, that Suella Braverman seems to be taking for stopping Labour housing migrants in our town. Now, all very worthy for a Member of Parliament to step up. I think actually she's becoming a little bit more visible recently, particularly when it comes to issues of a migration nature, which some might say is a little ironic, given that she was the Home Secretary of Great Britain up until only, 3 or 4 years ago. You could argue that despite the fact that she's grandstanding now to say, hey, we're stopping Labour housing migrants in our town, this is Waterlooville, which is a real place apparently, what was she doing when she was Home Secretary then? Not much, perhaps, we could argue.
Figure me that, you know. But Suella, OK, she might be looking now as a grassroots MP to thinking, what do her constituents actually want? And every time I hear of Waterlooville, I keep thinking it's a made-up town, it's not real, and, you know, it's not really happening.
Everybody. It's in Hampshire.
Or Waterloo Road, you know, that iconic soap that all these children seem to be on that witness knife crime, that witness everything else. But anyway, it's not. It is a real place in Hampshire, and she is a real MP.
Yeah.
And her husband, of course, has defected to Reform and now left Reform.
Yeah, very quickly. And he was only a member for a few months, wasn't it? I don't know what happened there exactly.
Well, I don't know, but everyone thought that she might actually walk over and join Reform as well.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if she doesn't, on the basis that, I mean, the way she's grandstanding, she fits the Reform MO, doesn't she, in terms of her politics?
Well, she really does, but she's also...
Do we think she's waiting?
Politicians don't do anything in the public for nothing.
No, well, they also...
OK, let's be honest, and this is August, this is quiet time at Westminster, this is generally the time that we can all put our feet up and, you know, relax a bit. And yet there she is, out rallying the troops and saying, you know, well, I stopped Labour using housing migrants to house them in our town, and I stopped that. It's a victory for ordinary folk. Well, is it, Suella? Is it really? I think we just...
I mean, so what is she up to here? Because you're bang on in terms of politicians do nothing for nothing. So, and it's normally to preserve themselves in terms of the safety of their seat. I'm not quite sure what Suella Braverman's majority is. Maybe someone behind the glass there can give us an idea of that, because she will presumably, as most MPs will, particularly on the Conservative side and Labour, be thinking about her seat, albeit, you know, another 3 to 4 years off. Is she testing the water here to see whether she should defect to Reform or stay Conservative?
It's Suella's litmus test.
Or is it another little go at the leadership? Because, look, you don't think so? She's had her time in that respect.
I think she's had her time in that respect, and I don't think anyone that has any political ambition would want to take over the head or the leadership of the Conservative Party, because the Conservative Party is the one that's failing in most of the polls. It's really not doing well at all, albeit I think Kemi is doing a better job than anyone else at the moment, and it is, as I said, it is a poison chalice. I don't think Kemi Badenoch will be the leader of the Conservatives at the next election.
Do you think it'll be Robert Jenner?
I hope not. But
why
anyway,
do you hope
I just don't think he is the best man for the job either.
Do you think he's authentic in his right-wing
credentials? I don't think he's authentic at all. I think the whole shtick with him doing the whole underground thing was just a pastiche at best. A bad Edinburgh Fringe at worst.
So what are we saying here? That whether it's Suella Braverman or Robert Jenner?
It's not Suella Braverman. She's not doing it for that.
No. But what I mean is whether it's to preserve their seat and to get re-elected, or whether it's to become leader. All of this stuff, rather than it being about constituents and country, it's about them. It's selfish. It's about self-preservation.
Yeah, but she's
everything
framing
they do is about optics.
But she's framing it as, you know, her being an MP for her constituents.
Yeah, but
you know, she's putting the Conservatives back out there as a party to reform with a small r the issue with migration that we have and immigration with this country.
I think it would be okay if she hadn't, some would say, failed as Home Secretary, in that under her tenure there was certainly no reduction in illegal migration by way of small boats. You know, she was yet another, she wasn't the only one, Priti Patel also, you could argue, Home Secretary, frankly, that oversaw an increase. Let's just have a look, actually. The producer's very helpfully, Claire. I didn't ask for this, but Dean in true professional fashion. Let's have a look at this. What is this here? So this is the amount of migrants, by the looks of it, under
So what?
Yeah. So this is so she received 17,561 votes against Labour's 11,400. So
it's a comfortable majority of her seat.
But the swing against Suella Braverman in the last election was 26%. So she does have a reasonable majority.
She does.
But she'll be worried now that, of course, the Conservatives haven't come back electorally. So look, this is about posturing in anticipation of her retaining her seat. Let's be honest.
But it's also her, you know, coat hanging onto the public opinion at the minute.
And also taking the credit for something that really was not much to do with her. Philip Munday, by the way, who heads up the local Havant Council's Labour, Liberal Democrat and Green coalition, what a thought, has accused Suella Braverman of seeking to exacerbate fear in the hearts and minds of our concerned residents on the migrant housing issue, and said her comments on it were deeply inappropriate, potentially inflammatory and ultimately misleading. And I think that's a lot of that is because, of course, the Labour Council doesn't see these people as illegal migrants. They are recategorising them as poor, needy asylum seekers. This is the problem with Labour, though, isn't it? They see everybody that comes over here as a needy asylum seeker. The reality is, a lot of these people
do you know what, Russell? I wish that Labour would turn the mirror around and actually look at the country of people who are British citizens here, who are overlooked, who do fall between the cracks, socially, economically, geographically, physically, and mentally.
We should look closer to home. Charity begins at home.
That's what I've said all along.
That adage. No, I think you're right. And when you've got veterans on the street, there was a story yesterday I saw in the press where a young single mother had been evicted from, I think it was a private rental property, because the landlord had done a deal with government to house migrants. And even one of the migrants, one of 5 migrants that moved into that property, said he was embarrassed that a young British single mother and her children had been slung out of a home to make way for him and 4 migrants. That is the state of Britain, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think about all this? 0344 499 1000. Text, as many people are doing already, even at this ungodly hour, 6:40 on a Sunday morning. 87222 plus the word talk. I'm still with Clare Muldoon until 7 o'clock, I think. When we come back, let's talk about shoplifting, because that is definitely something that raises the heckles of the talk audience, particularly when we tell you what is being suggested in order to solve the problem of shoplifting. Bearing in mind last year there were 500,000 incidents of shoplifting, and they were just the ones that were reported. Bearing in mind, as a shopkeeper now, you probably don't even bother reporting shoplifting now, because guess what? The police do precisely nothing about
diddly
such
squat.
things. Diddly squat, exactly. I'll be back after this. Welcome back, 6:42. This is Talk Breakfast. I'm Russell Quirk, in for Alex Phillips. I'm here till 10 o'clock. Peter Caldwell, of course, follows me until 1 o'clock. But yes, me until 10, and me and Clare Muldoon until about 7. Let's talk about the other thing that irritates us almost as much as the migration problem in Britain, and that's shoplifting. Something that now is being largely ignored, it seems, by police and the authorities. And bearing in mind, this is not a victimless crime, is it? Because you think about poor shopkeepers, and I mean those that own a shop. I'm not talking about the likes of Morrison's,
Sainsbury's,
and Iceland.
Tesco's, all the rest of the
those
others.
hard-working shopkeepers that are probably working 16 hours a day, that go and get
7 days a week now.
Exactly.
Spar hours, we used to call it. 7 to 7,
exactly.
7 to 8.
And they're working and working and working, and then they go and get hundreds of pounds worth of stuff, Nick, which they then have to pay for. So that comes directly out of their living, out of their income, or indeed they have to pass the cost on to us. But it does seem now that, a bit like in the United States, in some Democrat states, that shoplifting is really not seen by the police and the authorities as a crime anymore.
Well, we've got up to £200. That's the limit.
Free. It's almost £200 free. Yeah.
Go and help yourself.
I happen to be, my local BP station in Shenfield, which is also a Marks and Spencer's. I walked in there last weekend, and the manager, who I know in passing, was standing there on the phone looking out of the window and the doors of the BP. And I said, "Are you okay? You look very perplexed." And he said, "Oh no," he said, "we've got the shoplifters are back." And I said, "What do you mean, the shoplifters?"
Yeah,
I
well,
said,
they know them.
I said, "You know them?" He said, "Oh yeah." He said, "They come in almost every day." He said, "There's 4 of them." He said, "They wait for the coast to be clear. They rush in, they take, and they're not taking milk, butter and eggs for their family,
No.
Claire, are they?
No.
Do you know what they're nicking? Steak, wine,
pizzas,
beer, salmon. You know, and they don't seem the demographic really to be consuming.
Oh,
salmon on bagel,
no,
anyway,
Russell.
Anyway, and I said, "So what do you do about this?" He said, "Well, I can't do anything. So I'm not allowed to actually chastise them or intervene. I can't stop them, even though I'm watching them walk out the store with armfuls of goods." I said, "But what happens when you call the police?" And he just literally laughed in my face. He said, "Well, I've just done that." He said, "And they said, if they haven't committed an offence, there's nothing we can do." He said, "My reply to the police was, but by the time they've committed the offence, they've gone. Then I ring you and you turn up maybe 2 or 3 hours later.
Yeah.
So I think, OK, that's anecdotal. That's just one. And people watching and listening to this might have their own experiences in terms of the police in your area being far, far more adept. But I think it's fair to say that the police have given up on shoplifters, except to say, Claire, this particular story here in the Telegraph, which, believe it or not, this is Lancashire Constabulary, which is saying that what you should do as a shop owner is to have, and I'm not kidding you, by the way, this is not April the 1st, this is an edict, a diktat by Lancashire Constabulary saying that you should have greeters saying hello to customers at the door of your store in order to deter shoplifters. This is not a joke, Claire.
Well, with the social demographic up and down the country now, you'll be saying hello in lots of different languages before anyone can get actually through the door.
Yeah.
Now, I've witnessed a lot of stealing of things in supermarkets and shops and everything else, and it's the most horrid thing because it's rabid, right? You know it's going to happen, and it happens. And I daren't say anything which is completely going against the grain of my moral compass, because I'll tell you why. 1, I don't know if the person is armed. 2, the person is more than likely under the influence of either drugs or alcohol.
Yeah.
And 3, I think, really, but funnily enough, even me, which I prefer to give people the benefit of the doubt, and I know there's a lot of naysayers out there and goodwill gesture people and say, well, they're doing it because they need it, they've got no choice. No, that's not the case. That's not what I've witnessed.
They're nicking stuff to sell, or sometimes it's part of an organised crime ring, the same as pickpocketing and so on.
They're not stealing to give to the poor. They're not being Robin Hood about it.
No, and that's why, you know, when it's
and they'll actually
gangs of people in Oxford Street nicking Nike trainers and laptops. Yeah, that's not to feed their kids either. But listen to this. This is an online guide that has been produced. This is very helpful. I'm saying this very sarcastically, everybody, by the way. And it's called How to Deter a Shoplifter. Well, I would suggest it's police officers and courts and prison. But anyway, apparently Lancashire Constabulary, everybody, thinks somewhat differently. They say, and I'm not making this up, let me just read this verbatim from the top of this story in the Telegraph. By greeting genuine shoppers, not only does this provide a positive impression of your store, it also deters potential shoplifters. An offender is less likely to shoplift if they sense that they are to be seen and noticed by staff, or indeed if you're just nice to them.
That's not true, they're just so blatant. There's absolute rubbish.
Can you believe that Lancashire Constabulary, no wonder we have such a problem with our police, when someone who presumably has a semblance of intelligence
what are you going to say?
says that, yes, that's right, lots of different languages.
Bonjour.
But they truly believe that the answer, rather than it being a question, as I say, of a greater police presence, being tougher on shoplifters, actually arresting them, taking them through the court process and making sure they go to prison so they understand that, guess what, it's a crime. Instead, we should be smiling and saying hello sweetly to them.
It's a crime that this is actually in print. It's a crime that they're asking us to do this. I say to that, arrivederci, ciao.
Yeah, I mean, it's but we've seen this a lot. Again, when I presented, I think it was on Friday, there were 2 separate stories with regard to police and crime commissioners, one of whom, at least, if not both of them, were Conservatives. So do you remember when the Conservatives were tough on crime? I'm going back a bit. I might be going back to the 70s or 80s.
80s it was.
Probably, so because it hasn't happened
Thatcher,
since. They were suggesting, one suggested there's absolutely nothing the police can do about shoplifting. I mean, seriously. And the other suggested that it's up to you and I, Claire, and the public to intervene. Now, to your point, I mean, look, I'm no shrinking violet, as I think most people know.
But nor am I.
No, but my BP experience last weekend, I'm thinking, OK, well, I'd like to help my fellow human here that has the responsibility of this shop.
And staff.
Indeed. So, in the end, by the way, let me finish the story. I said, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to stand in the middle of the door and hope that they don't rush past me. And I thought, the poor fella, the poor fella. So he could just stand aside and watch them ransack the store, but at least he's got the gumption and the ethics to try and do something. And then I'm thinking, OK, well, I'm going to kind of stand with this guy and try and help him. But then, to your point, you think, these people, not only are they probably intoxicated, but they probably don't have the, I don't know, social awareness, intelligence, morals, whatever, not to then commit violence in order to get away from a confrontation.
Do you know when I think this started to become a bit of more of a problem?
Non-competitive sports days, that's where it all went wrong.
What are those? Right, what are those? Let's not even go down that rabbit hole.
That's where it all went wrong,
Quirk.
in my opinion.
No, I think it all went wrong with removing the ability to go through a till.
Yes.
It really, really did. And it's supermarkets' own fault for this, because they have enabled people to shoplift, right, profusely from these self-service checkout point things.
Yeah, where it really goes wrong, though, is when thieves realise, they are thieves, by the shoplifters, let's call them what they are thieves, they are criminals, is when they realise that there's no consequences to their actions. If you as a criminal, whether you're a bank robber, a rapist or a shoplifter, when you realise that there's not much chance of getting caught, but even if you do get caught, then you might get a little slap on the wrist by one of these liberal judges that Claire and I were arguing about a few minutes ago. Oh, here we goes again, she says. Well, then you are much more likely to commit crime and to continue to do so on the basis that there are no consequences. And of course, if you do go to prison, you get released early. By the way, all of those prisoners last year that got...
Prisons are full.
Well, they are full, but let's just build some more. I would pay another penny on my tax in order to build another few prisons. But let me just come back to the point I was about to make about those that were released early by Keir Starmer. Do you remember that at the end of last year?
Yes.
Guess how many of those that were released have reoffended?
Oh, about half.
75%.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Well, the guy that was released then went to his ex, beat her up a bit again.
Yeah, I know.
And then it's just...
But isn't that an obvious consequence?
But Russell, I remember, and I actually was very much for this position being given to Lord Timpson as prison czar.
Oh, the cobbler.
Yes, who's a great man, built a great business. But what has happened now to this? And I think prisons should be taken back under state control. I don't think they should be private firms.
Do you think one of the problems is that it's privatised?
Yes, I think a lot of it is because they're lobbying. They don't get paid unless there's bums and seats and bums and cells.
Yeah.
Do they really?
OK.
And there's no account. And also on that, women prison officers should not be allowed to work in male prisons, and vice versa.
What do you think about that? 0344 499 1000. Do you agree with Claire that A, prisons should not be in private ownership, and also that yes, male prisons should only have male warders? I mean, I certainly agree that male prisons should only have men in them and women prisons should only have women in them. Controversial, old-fashioned view, really. But anyway.
But they work.
Politicians continue to tie themselves up in knots over such
Well, some
things.
Politicians don't even know what a man is and a woman is.
Exactly.
Let's be honest, Russell.
Exactly, and therein lies the
David
problem
Lammy,
again.
one of them.
Indeed. 6:52, we're going to take a break. Back with Claire after this. Welcome back, everybody. It is 5 to 7. I'm still joined by Clare Muldoon. We are rattling through the stories that are of the day and in the papers. But lots of you are commenting, actually, on the stuff that we're commenting on. So comments on comments, particularly about the combination, the new combination, maybe the new Eamon and Ruth, which is Russell Quirk and Clare Muldoon. Who knew?
Well, they're no more.
Well, no. Well, there's a gap. There's a gap to fill. So Tim says, Russell and Claire, I'm listening to you intently, and we thought the troubles of the 80s were bad. Yeah, sorry if we're putting a downer on your Sunday morning. We don't mean to, but we are informing, bringing you the news and opinionating about it, and hopefully somewhat entertaining. We've got another one here that says... I've got to call you out on this, Claire, actually. Where is it?
You have a go at calling me out for something, Russell Quirk, and see where that gets you.
I love Claire. Says Mark. Doesn't give his surname or his location because he's scared of you, I suspect. But she's 100% wrong about two-tier justice. It's everywhere. What do you say to Mark?
Mark, where are you? I mean, for heaven's sake. Wake up, smell the coffee, have a coffee.
Right,
I'm not wrong, I'm never wrong.
Claire's never wrong. Michael says, good morning, Russell and Claire. Great combination. Oh, how the world has changed since I went to school in the 40s and 50s. Where did Bob a Job go? God, you remember that?
Gosh, Michael, that was a scout thing, wasn't it? Where the scouts and cubs used to come round and clean people's windows or mow a lawn or
kids used to come and ask to clean your cars.
And you had a wee sticker you put in your window to make sure that no other one... It was almost like a passing lantern over Passover.
Hang on, the text gets a bit more sinister. It says, I proudly wore my Scout's sheath knife with its 6-inch blade anywhere. Well, you couldn't do that now, could you? Well, actually, you could in certain parts of London, and you'd get away with it. What happened to the Boys Brigade, helping boys grow up knowing about duty and right from wrong? I worry about my grandchildren. Hopeless politicians at all levels.
And there's no identity either, Michael. There's no identity for these young lads coming through. There's no identity either for young girls coming through to be safe and fervently safe in their own bodies. They're told they can be anything they want, which is ludicrous, and it's child abuse.
Yeah, my daughters go to a certain school in Essex, and one of them came home recently. They won't be listening to this because they're teenagers and they won't be up for another 6 or 7 hours probably. But they informed me that there are 2 children in that particular school, which I won't name, that identify as what are known as furries. Furries or furries?
Furries.
They are cats, apparently. My response to that was, I'd love to be the head teacher, because I would be putting them down a tin of whiskers at lunchtime every day and making them go to the toilet on a litter tray.
On a litter tray, yeah, I agree with you.
Another text. Stuart Brown, I'm sorry, Claire, it's against you. I think it's more than obvious that there are far too many woke DEI brainwashed left-wing judges making ridiculous decisions in our justice system, and it needs sorting ASAP. You know what the answer could be? What? Elected judges, like in the United States.
No.
Well, it's already politicised. I know you disagree with that. But can we talk about Neil Kinnock?
Yes, let's.
Do you remember Neil Kinnock?
I do. Remember him falling in the sea, falling in the sand, remember?
I'm saying this with again,
glibness.
My usual inverted commas, which someone took the mickey out of me on Twitter for saying all the time yesterday. But if you're listening to this, you won't know if I'm being sarcastic. Neil Kinnock, the best Prime Minister we never had.
Yeah, well.
Chortle. So he
That was
says,
actually John Smith.
Oh, was it?
The best? No, it was right about that. But I think he enabled Tony Blair to get in.
An untimely passing, indeed.
Yes, exactly.
I still remember that morning.
I know.
I still remember that morning.
Brilliant
so
politician.
Neil Kinnock, the ex-Labour leader, going back to
Lord Kinnock now.
Lord Kinnock, mid-90s. He says we must scrap the 2-child cap on benefits. Now, there's all sorts of political confusion over this because, of course, the Labour Party uncharacteristically have said that they, for now, are going to retain it. It was introduced by the Conservatives. Even Reform have said, Nigel Farage has said, and this is very against the grain of Reform ideology, I would suggest, Claire. The Reform Party have said that they would also scrap the 2-child cap. So in other words, you would be able to have benefits given to you on further children born. Now, I think that if you can't afford to have kids, you don't have any more kids. Claire?
This is not what this is about, right? This is not about paying like your single woman, single mother to have more children so she can move up and get another room in a council house.
You're probably going to have to
continue
continue
this. This is not what this is about.
This is why you're going to stay for another 15 minutes, because we're running out of time, so we're going to go to the news, or you might not stay. There's no way you're walking out.
I'm off.
Let's talk about this after the break. Looks like we're not going to agree, everybody. Do you? 0344 499 1000, or send us a text 87222. Dean's locking the doors. Claire's staying for another 15 minutes. I'm Russell Quirk. We will be back after this. Welcome back. Just gone 7 o'clock. Good morning to you if you're just getting up. I'm joined by Clare Muldoon in the studio now, just for the next 15 or 20 minutes or so. We're going to carry on the debate.
Don't push it.
Yeah, the debate. Well, she was going to leave just now. Make your mind up. You're going to leave the studio. I've got to read you this, though. This is a text that's just come in. We're getting lots of texts about the me and Claire combination this morning. This is a text that's coming in. Now, I'm going to read you, first of all, what it says because of the punctuation, and leave you to kind of understand what it actually meant to say. Good morning, Russell. It's always a pleasure to see Claire. She is the best Sharon. I think it means to say she's the best, full stop, Sharon Miller. But basically, it looked, when I first read it, I've got to say, it looked like it was an insult and someone was calling you a Sharon.
I wouldn't have taken that as an insult.
It's maybe Freudian just on my part, because you and I are going to disagree.
Is your wife called Sharon?
No, it's close. Carolina. Carolina is my wife. Right, let's go back to this story. This is the old Labour Guard meddling. This is Gordon Brown and Neil Kinnock getting stuck into something where they're obviously trying to put pressure on the current Labour government to reduce the 2-child benefit cap. So that is to say that...
Scrap it, not reduce it.
Scrap it, sorry, yeah. So in other words, in the future, the more children you have, the more money you get from the state, because of course the benefits bill is not big enough. Lord Kinnock says that the move could be funded, yawn, here we go again, by a wealth tax on the top 1%. Sounds like Richard Bergen, that lefty idiot, in my view, that, doesn't understand what the Laffer curve is. Claire, you and I disagree on this, don't we?
Yeah, well, let me tell you why you're wrong.
OK.
The 2-child benefit cap was introduced by George Osborne, right, as part of the austerity measures, OK, and to get people into work. That's the reason he did it, was not to stop people having children, but in order for families to grow, to show the benefits of working within that family, which in my view you have to, because it shows your children lots of virtues. You need to bring your children up with virtues. It shows them diligence, it shows them discipline, it shows them industry, and it shows them the ability of mum and dad, or mum or dad, to save up for things, to buy things, to treat the children, to pay their way in order to become good, honest citizens of society.
To demonstrate that work pays.
Yes.
That is a worthy philosophy, though, isn't it?
Great, yeah.
So why are you against the scrapping?
In practice, it didn't work. That's the reason. It actually put more children not into relative poverty. Relative poverty is a very mealy-mouthed, wokey, liberal elite term for, well, when I was a lad, when I was down pit, it was like this, okay? And then, oh, well, you can't do this, you can't have your Sky, you can't have this, you can't go to PGL, you can't do this. That's relative poverty, right? But in my view, no poverty is acceptable for children, no matter what way you frame it. Now, this two-child benefit cap system was brought in to penalise families, right? To get them into work. But as I said, it didn't work, and we've got the data and we've got the research and we've got the evidence to support that fact. What we now have to do with an ageing population, with children being born into poverty, and with the only way out of poverty is education, the only way to educate people is to give them a boost to life, a boost to family values, and a boost to the society, because we have to take the cut now. Okay. Russell, and we have to make sure
that boost is surely working. I mean, there are 1 million vacancies in Britain right now, but why should I, as a taxpayer, subsidise?
It's not just you that's a taxpayer. I'm a taxpayer
all of us are taxpayers, but you know,
even people on benefits are taxpayers.
Being selfish just for a second, why should I subsidise someone that wants to have 6 children and allow them to have an increasing level of benefits because they don't want to go out and work?
Because it's not just that demographic, Russell. There's people who fall into, like the single mother who was evicted from her house for the landlord to put in illegal immigrants, asylum seekers. Okay?
But there are other benefits available to those people. I mean, we now have how many people on universal credit? Something like, is it £150 billion is now spent on benefits?
They're not all families.
There are 22...
It's not all families.
22 billion people in the UK. Bear in mind, we're a population of only 70 billion. 70 million. 22 million people on benefits in the UK. We now have 1.5 million foreigners, people that weren't even born here, on universal credit.
Yeah.
This benefit system, this benefit gravy train, is out of control, and that is why
600,000 children will be taken out of poverty by the stopping of this child benefit cap.
Yeah.
And any child, as I said, any child living in poverty is Dickensian. It's wrong, and it's a very sad indictment of society, Russell.
Claire,
and a lot of those people in universal credit, a lot of that money will be a housing allocation for it that will be going to private landlords.
The problem with the poverty argument is that you can apply that, particularly in the southeast, where the cost of living is high. You can apply that to anybody living on the breadline, so to speak, and say that therefore we should just increase benefits generally. More
I'm not
universal
saying
credit.
that.
Yeah, but that is the poverty argument that
No,
you're
it's
advancing.
not. No, it's not. Poverty is much more than paying rent, Russell. Poverty is much more than that. Poverty is the inability for children to have health, inability of children to have better education attainments, leaving schools. The data is there.
Me of the decision.
And then you've got, no, Russell, let me finish on this, because then you've got the families who might fall through the cracks. We need that safety net there. Yeah. We can't tell people you can only have 2 children and then you'll be fine.
Well, no, you can have as many children as you want, but I just don't think the state should pay for them.
The state aren't. It's a very small proportion of people. No, they're not. They're not doing it just now.
In this instance, they would be. Right, look, we need to go through the front pages. That's the second disagreement we've had now. Isn't it good?
Well, I'm not talking to you now. I'm supposed to leave. I'm off.
Dean, if you unlock the door, because she's going to run out again. Let's go through the front pages.
What do you mean again? I didn't make it the first time.
You didn't. He stopped you. Right, front page of the Sun. Yep. BBC calls in cops in Strictly Pro.
Oh, let's talk about Thomas Skinner.
Well,
let's
do that
Thomas
as well,
Skinner.
because yesterday it was announced what the lineup is.
Yep.
I mean, some of these people I've even heard of, Claire, for Strictly. Thomas Skinner is one of them. He's a fellow Essex boy. I'm delighted that he's going in. Not everybody's happy. Apparently he's polarising. Lorinda Kaur, my friend, inverted commas, another inverted commas there on Twitter, thinks it's disgraceful that Thomas Skinner should be allowed to go into Strictly. Why is it disgraceful? In fact, there's an independent journalist has written today, is it Rachel McGrath, I think, who has said it's appalling, it's disgusting, because he has a checkered history, a checkered past, he's lived a life, he should not be allowed on Strictly.
What, does that mean that Boris Johnson can never be a contestant on Strictly then? There's never been a past more varied than his, I'd say.
Yeah, no, well, we've all got a past, haven't we?
Of course we have.
Yeah.
And that should not be a burden. That should not be, you know, the skeletons in the cupboard. It should not be a pathway unless you're a convicted murderer.
I suggest that Thomas Skinner represents more of the majority of this country than certainly any politician, and probably most of the celebrities that are about to put on their dancing shoes for the BBC.
Right,
Strictly.
where do you want to go to now?
We've done a lot of stuff around it. Let's do the front page of the Star, because it's always funny.
I love the Star.
Beware of the lager lout gulls. There it is, so you can see it.
Drunken rowdy seagulls are pinching pints in parks and even picking fights with bin men.
Yes. So
I hate seagulls.
We all know what happens on the seafront, where gulls come down, they nick your chips and your ice cream. Well, now they're apparently stealing beer. Wow, well, they would. This is the 21st century. This is 2025. Seagull louts.
They'll actually, what they should have done here is actually superimposed wife beater vest on there, like, you know, the Stella Artois vest.
I shouldn't laugh about that, but yes, I know exactly what
you
you
know
mean.
exactly what I mean.
I do. Sunday Express says the world is in grave danger if the West caves into Putin. And of course, Claire and I talked about that.
Who says that? It's not.
This is a lot of people are saying it, particularly on the right. A lot of conservative type politicians that we should stand up to Putin. Well, I remind everybody that this war started in 2014 with the invasion of Crimea. It was then accentuated in February 2022 by the invasion by the Russians of Donbass. And standing up to Putin in terms of what, $250 billion later, lots of weapons, and I remind you also, 1 million plus casualties. It hasn't got us very far, and I would suggest, as with all these disputes, including Northern Ireland and goodness knows what else, you have to get around the negotiation table.
Of course you do.
And you've got to give.
Yes.
I'm afraid. It is just a pragmatic...
It's transactional.
Reality, it is, and that's why I think, back to our point earlier, one of the rare things we did agree on today, Claire and I, Donald Trump is the man to facilitate that. Yeah, indeed.
He definitely is.
The people, though, say, and they would, that Vladimir Putin ran rings around Donald Trump. We also think, or some think, that Putin has laid a trap for Zelensky, on the basis that now Zelensky has really got to respond to whatever it is that Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump decide that he must give up. And of course, if he says no, then he looks like the bad guy, apparently. Well, I don't buy that at all. I also don't buy, by the way, that Donald Trump's efforts have resulted in failure. If anyone, any politician, any diplomat really thought that Donald Trump was going to spend 3 hours in Alaska and solve the problem of Russia and the Ukraine in that single meeting, well, then you really are very, very naive indeed.
Do you know who's been very quiet in all of this? Lord Mandelson, who's the envoy for the ambassador to Washington.
Yeah, no, indeed.
Where is he?
Yes, well, where is he indeed?
I don't care where he is, actually.
Should he be piping up, do you think?
Well, I don't think he should be. I don't think he should be in that position in any event.
Yeah,
that's another story.
The person that amuses me in all of this, though, and he's obviously not my favourite person, it won't surprise anybody to learn, is Starmer. Of course, Starmer seems to continually jockey for position when it comes to Ukraine, with his sharp elbows, trying to make it look as though he's somehow relevant and important. He's really not, is he?
No. And that's what I said at the top of your show. He's merely a spectator, and the reality is that that's the rub.
Yeah.
Ursula von der Leyen, etc., are all there, you know, cosplaying up together, you know, saying this, that, and the next thing, and he's just the footnote, if even.
Well, they're all jostling for a Nobel Peace Prize. Who knows? Donald Trump might even win it.
Nominated Trump for that. I mean, you could not make this up.
Yeah.
And did Modi do it too?
Yeah, no, indeed. What else? The racing fraternity, as in horse racing, is going to go on strike, says the front page of the Sunday Times. This is horse racing is going to take an unprecedented step of going on strike next month, cancelling all meetings for a day in protest at the proposed betting tax increase. That's yet another tax increase by our friend Rachel Reeves. Wait for some more.
She's no friend of mine.
Well, she's no friend of pensioners, working people, farmers. I mean, she's no friend of a lot of members and elements of society, she, Rachel Reeves, but just wait till November, until the next budget, because she came for us with 20 or so billion pounds worth of tax increases in the last budget, plus then, of course, the spring statement.
When is the autumn budget?
It'll be in November, and I suspect that she will impose maybe a version of a wealth tax, although they've denied doing that. She will probably do something with VAT, and I suspect she will do something to put the squeeze on the so-called rich, which basically is anyone earning over about £60,000 or £70,000 a year, and she will seek to shore up the black hole that she has made of her own doing even more by squeezing the middle classes. That's what's coming, isn't it?
She will just not. I mean, she's decimating small and medium enterprises, and it's actually putting a cap on those that would love to work, but it's not within their interest financially to work even harder or more.
Yeah.
Because everything will just go to the taxman. Well, and you're working for nothing, basically.
Some dispute as regards, again, we rehearsed yesterday with Reem Ibrahim that there's, apparently, according to Henley and Partners, 16,000 millionaires leaving Britain this year, or are forecast to, and there's some dispute over that. But whether it's 16,000 millionaires or 1,600, it's still not a good look, because despite the fact that the left look at millionaires as the pantomime villain in society, I'm afraid to tell you and break it to you on the left that those millionaires are exactly the people that pay tax. Yes, they really do.
They've got the broader shoulders.
But they also employ lots of people. They also pay lots and lots of tax via national insurance as employers. They also pay lots of tax on things like purchases by way of VAT, stamp duty on purchases of residential property. What's the stat? Forgive me if I'm wrong here, Claire, you might know better than me, but I think it's something like 60% of all income tax is paid by the top 10% of earners.
Something like that.
So guess what happens if you get rid of the 10% of top earners? 60% of the income tax that comes into the Treasury, which is about £300 or £400 billion, will disappear. And that is what this whole Laffer curve thing is. And I know it's only 7:16 on a Sunday morning, but the maths is simple. The more you squeeze people that are entrepreneurs, employers and wealth creators, as Rachel Reeves has done and will continue to do, the more you do that, the more they either leave or they find ways of avoiding tax. It is, by the way, that tax that pays the doctors, the nurses, the free school meals, the
doctors are quite quiet as well
benefits.
Recently, aren't they?
Well, they're quiet because they're striking.
West Streeting? Well, they're not striking.
Well, they're coming back out and striking again
soon. Well,
are they?
That's the thing.
Well, maybe not. Well, it was only a third of them that voted for the strike, of course.
It was, not even, I think,
Well, I think if we look at what's happened with the public sector and pay awards in the first 13 months of this government, Claire, is it fair to say that Wes Streeting is just going to give in?
No, he's not going to give in.
You don't think he's going to give the 20%?
No, I quite like Wes, actually.
Well, he's better than Starmer, potentially.
I think he really ought to be the leader of the Labour Party. I think he's a good man. I think he's doing a lot of good things for the NHS that needs to be done.
But waiting lists aren't coming down.
Eh?
Waiting lists aren't coming down.
Because there's more people using them, and I'll tell you.
Exactly.
Well,
that's because we've got 700,000 people net migration.
£150 GPs are going to be offered to see asylum seekers.
Before we go to, well, I've got to say goodbye to you, haven't I, in a second. Let's talk about quickly that Labour leadership thing. So you think Wes Streeting will probably be the next leader of the Labour Party before the next election?
I mean, I'm not. Your viewers will know this. I am politically homeless.
Yeah. I
am certainly not left-leaning. I'm more right-leaning than anything, right of centre than anything, but certainly not reform. But I do think that Wes Streeting should be he's a good ambassador for what he believes in. He's
more of a Blairite, isn't he?
No, that's Starmer. No, not at all.
No, Starmer's not a Blairite.
He is.
I think Starmer's Corbyn. Starmer's Corbyn in disguise.
No.
I'll tell you, but just before we go, and regretfully I've got to say goodbye because we're going to speak to Chris Whitbread, who's leader of Epping Council in a second after the break. Do you know what I think happens with Labour?
What?
I think Starmer will be deposed because I think the election results next year in the local elections and the mayoral elections will be devastating for Labour. I think there'll be pressure from the grassroots Labour Party to get rid of Starmer. Do you know who I think is next? And this is a curveball, you heard it here first. Sadiq Khan. He will be re-elected to Parliament in a by-election. It'll have to be a pretty safe Labour seat, frankly, at the moment. And he will seek to become leader of the Labour Party and therefore Prime Minister.
No, he won't be.
That is a horrifying thought, everybody, by the way.
Absolutely horrifying thought.
It is a horrifying thought, but I think that's what will happen because the man knows...
After living with him as Mayor of London.
You've lived with Sadiq Khan? Claire, wow, that is a revelation, everybody. Clare Muldoon has lived with Sadiq Khan.
No, she hasn't.
You should have brought him up better.
No, she hasn't.